Hey everyone, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. What you're about to see in just a few minutes is my conversation with Brent Beard. What makes this special is it's the very first of my conversations with you. So please join us on Patreon, the voice of college football community. So every week, once a week, I'm going to jump online live with you. So whomever wants to jump on with me, I will bring on, let's say, 1 to 3 of you in the community to talk college football each and every week. We did it this past week at Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and most likely that's going to be our stop for the next several weeks until we figure out maybe a better time for all of you, as you can chime in with your recommendations and your suggestions of what works best for you. Of course, we can't accommodate everyone, but what I want to accommodate is our engagement as a community, which is just centers around my conversation with you, the college football fan, and our community as you help us build this channel and do it up the right way. So again, over on Patreon, please sign up. If you have any questions about it, please email me directly, MarkRogersTV@gmail. If you have any comments, suggestions, recommendations, and certainly if you have any questions about what we're doing at the Voice of College Football community on Patreon, please contact me directly, MarkRogersTV@gmail. Would love to talk to you. This is our first in a discussion with you, the community. Forget that Brent's a professional. The reason that he's on this conversation is because he is a subscriber to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football community on Patreon. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Hello, Justin. Hello, everyone who will eventually be watching us today. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, with our very first community live stream. Community meaning you, generically the viewer, but you're much more than that as you engage in the product that we deliver each and every day on YouTube and now here on Patreon. So thanks so much for joining us. And Justin in particular, who commented, Justin, to the live posts there on Patreon. Thank you so much for commenting. We just, of course, this being the first to go around, the setup for the live stream is a little bit different here on Patreon than it is on YouTube. We have a Brent Beard joining us. You can catch him on the First Coast News, but let's first set this up and once again remind you that this is the first of several live streams that we'll be doing each week. So this is going to be one per week, delivered and promised to you, that we bring you, the community, the voice of college football community, the viewer, on to talk college football with me as a roundtable discussion. So Brent is a professional, but let's not confuse it. He is on here because he is a Patreon member and subscriber and has joined the community here. Again, Brent, you can catch him on First Coast News. He's also a Heisman voter and is on College Sports Today as the co-host on Sports Radio 930 AM Jacksonville. Brent, how you doing today?
Mark, I'm doing well. It's great to be back with you. Certainly, even though it's the merry month of May, there's still a lot that's going on this time of year, particularly the SEC wrapping things up in Destin as they're dealing with a lot of different issues. I think probably a lot of those big checks will either be sent out today or either they will be coming up in a few months and they'll at least know about it. But I think it's been a pretty productive week for the SEC. A lot of the television early games, Mark, have been announced, which is always interesting. And glad to say that we've got a few magazines that are already on the shelves. One of the great things about May, Mark, is for guys like me who still remember and appreciate the magazines, they're on the shelf. So even though it's May, we have no games, there's still a lot to talk about.
You know, Brent, I'm sometimes surprised because especially the younger fans obviously go right to the internet, as I do now. It's my habit that they still, it's good for many of us just to have the copy right in the hand. We can take it by the pool or take it different places and by the beach. and be ready to absorb college football information to get set for the 2019 kickoff. So you do have some of the magazines right there. It wouldn't take even an average college football fan long to list the top 3 or 4 teams in the country and make some kind of playoff projection or
Sure.
top 5 list. As you scan the magazines based on what you've absorbed, are there any surprises, anything that you think is a bit of a reach? I'm sure it's mostly standard with the Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma narrative as the top 5 to 6, with Michigan jumping in there for some. But anything that you think might be a bit of a reach?
Well, and the funny thing is, a lot of these magazines, Mark, will be used in August for the coaches poll and also for the AP poll. So they will get a lot out from them. Out so far, Athlon, Lindy's, and Street and Smith. Those of you who are connoisseurs of the magazines remember the Street and Smith. Mark, do you remember this? On the front, they had the single bar on the helmet for the player.
Yes.
On the cover, that was
right.
standard for them, if you remember that. So that might jog the memory of a few folks. Pretty typical with the magazine so far. Clemson #1 in Lindy's. Street and Smith and Athlon have Bama, but yet it's just reversed in the others. So the thing that you got, not just looking at who is #1, but thinking about who is going to be in the top 4. That's kind of what's changed our thinking with the playoff over the years. Mark, a lot of love, certainly for LSU. LSU is in every top 10 of the magazine so far. And Mark, would you be surprised to know that the Florida Gators are in the top 10 for all the magazines so far? So is Notre Dame. Oregon also mentioned with that. And I think maybe a bit of a surprise in Athlon, Texas A&M is number 10. Now, obviously, you've got Texas A&M with that brutal schedule that they've got. Jimbo Fisher, obviously getting that team up to speed. It's going to be exciting to see where they're going to go, but they've got to play Clemson. They will have Alabama, Auburn at home, also Georgia. So if you're looking for a reach, maybe A&M at 10 might be, but I really think they are on the road to being what Fisher and the A&M fans want them to be in the future.
So I completely agree, and I think you touch upon a subject that that I approach at times when I'm asked about top 10, 25 lists preseason. So I'm asked, and I will obviously deliver mine at some point, but do you rank the teams just based on how good do you think they are, 1 through 10, 1 through 25 for that particular publication? Or does that publication or individual take the approach, well, I'm going to weight how good I believe the team is versus the schedule? For Texas A&M, I don't have a huge issue with them being considered roughly the 10th best team in the country, but will they produce the 10th best record or performance in the country that's going to be evaluated and ranked as number 10 in the country? They could go like 7-5 and really be one of the 15 best teams in the country this year with that schedule that you allude to.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there's any doubt the schedule has so much to do with that. Mark, can you also say the same thing about Auburn? I think Auburn starting with Oregon, and then Auburn this year going to Florida, which is a big news for us down here near Gainesville, as you can imagine. And then obviously with Georgia and the West teams that they've still got to play. So to your point, with that incredible defensive line, that is probably somewhere near what Clemson had last year, but with the new quarterback, maybe either Bo Nix at this point or Joey Gatewood, who is also from Jacksonville. I think you could kind of make a case for both A&M and Auburn, could you, Mark, that these are probably really good football teams, maybe very worthy of at least the bottom of the top 10, if not the first bit between 10 and 15. But that schedule is going to cause that record to be certainly not what they want.
So again, I think there has to be an explanation by the magazines as to whether they're ranking the 25 best teams in the country or the 25 best performances of what they expect versus the schedule. I think their aim is to measure the schedule versus the team, because they want to look
Yes.
back at the end of the season. And if people look at accurate predictions on the top 25 and not try to wield a disclaimer that, well, Texas A&M was really this good, but the record doesn't show that. Therefore, they finished number 22 in the country, but they're really a much better team than that. Yeah, Clemson, their schedule, unfortunately, and it's not their fault,
Yeah.
is projects to be weak this year because the ACC was down last year, arguably the worst conference in the Power Five. Doesn't expect to be much better. Florida State, Miami are the two wild cards. They could change that narrative, but Clemson certainly schedules out of conference with the annual South Carolina game, plus the Texas A&M game that was a barn burner at Kyle Field last year. So Clemson certainly tries to schedule difficult, but the ACC is just down.
Yeah, and Mark, let me say a quick word about that. Well, we're pretty close with the ACC, as you can imagine. Tallahassee and Florida State is only 2.5 hours away. So we pretty well keep dibs on that conference too. One of the things that you'll find in the three magazines, if you're an ACC fan, obviously Clemson is either 1 or 2. And then after that, it's hard to find an ACC team afterwards. Miami is 19 in Lindy's, but otherwise you basically got to go to the 30s to find FSU. Now think about that a minute, Mark. FSU in the 30s. That's almost sacrilege, is it not, for what we grew up with?
Absolutely.
Bobby Bowden and what they're used to. But and even though Jimbo Fisher at SEC Media Days, now with Texas A&M, said that he left FSU in great shape, I don't think FSU fans would agree with that, would they, Mark?
No, the recruited talent was fine, but yeah, there was just a number of dysfunctions in the program, and the recruiting wasn't what it was when he first arrived. No question about that. There just wasn't the fire and the focus that he brought in 2013, 14, 15, and 16. Those that last season in particular in 2017. But the last season at 7-6 with a bowl victory in the Birmingham Bowl. So yeah, when you look at the ACC, I think that's a fair assessment of the ACC in that Clemson is just in another category. They are a favorite in their division like no other team in college football, where there just seems to be no competition. Syracuse was the second best team in the conference last year, but it would have to be proven to myself and others that recruited classes in the 50s and 60s are going to produce 10-win seasons over and over and over. NC State was the 3rd seed last year. They lost their quarterback, Ryan Finley, and their playmakers on offense for the most part. And so the two programs, as you well know, that need to lift that conference are Miami and Florida State. And it has yet to be seen with a first-year head coach in Manny Diaz coming off 6 losses, and Florida State, which I am still shaking my head over how they could not lose 7 games, but not be competitive in most of those losses. We have to see if they're able to turn it around under Willie Taggart and a new offensive coordinator in Kendall Briles.
Big game early on, Mark, in September as Clemson goes to Syracuse. And Syracuse, frankly, has, and Dino Babers deserves a lot of credit. They've been very competitive. They, frankly, could have beaten Clemson a few times over these last few years. So you would think right now, I'm with you, I would almost give Syracuse the nod for the second best team. Obviously, so many questions for Miami, and they get Florida early on August the 24th in Orlando. That's going to be a huge game, I think, for everybody who is excited to be able to see that. But again, who is the quarterback going to be? Dan Enos, who came from Alabama, I think is going to be tremendous for their offense and helping the quarterback. I think their defense, particularly with those linebackers in Pinckney and Quarterman, are some of the best around. But I still think, Mark, Miami is still going to be a year or two away before they actually get everybody on the same page. The recruiting is also improved. The FSU situation, to me, could be in dire straits. They start the season here in Jacksonville with Boise State. I do think that if that offensive line could be better, and Dickerson just ended up going in the transfer portal Mark, he went in, came out, now he's back in again. So he's one of their better offensive linemen. That's going to hurt them. Cam Akers, we know, is back. He's going to be healthy. DJ Matthews at wide receiver is one of the better wide receivers in the ACC. But again, with Miami and Florida State in the ACC, we had dreams and visions around here of those two teams playing in the ACC championship on a regular basis. Mark, hasn't happened yet. Not going to happen this year either, is it?
I don't believe so. It's odd to think and project about Miami or really anyone out of the Coastal Division being truly a contender. Last year, we saw a Pitt team that eventually lost 7 games, but they did win the division. So they were 60 minutes technically from winning an ACC championship. And I think we pretty much, unless a lot changes between now and the first week of December, that we're in the same situation where it's just, okay, the Coastal Division is a muddled mess and somebody's got to win it. And they might be 8-4 down to 7-5, but there will be a team that is selected from the Coastal Division. Most likely, they may be tied with 3 other teams for a division championship, but move on to a conference championship game. I want to remind everyone that Brent is a professional, but he's not here as a professional of sorts. So we have launched this live stream for you, the community here at the Voice of College Football, and we'll be having fans come on here each and every week. And we've started this as a Saturday morning deal. And there is more to come in terms of the explanation of what we're doing and the invitation for you. But you can catch Brent on College Sports Today, Sports Radio 930 a.m. in Jacksonville. Also at First Coast News. He's a Heisman voter and very knowledgeable on the game of college football, of course. Brent, I want to keep you to your commitment. So whenever you need to take off, you just run out on me and just let me know.
Mark, let's go for about 5 more minutes if we can. I also want to mention to our viewers, Twitter, at Brent Beard, Beaird. We have all the vowels, but what we do is a regular update of our Twitter feed on a daily basis about college sports, and we certainly enjoy doing that. Mark, one thing that I did want to mention, and I thought this is important, to me, it's just absolutely beautiful and radical at the same time. The SEC is actually talking about being more transparent with their officiating. Steve Shaw, who is director of officials, frankly does a tremendous job in working with the media and frankly also with the public. Now, some of the things that he's talked about this week is, now, and I hope viewers are sitting down for this, but there is actually some conversation about having a midweek show during the season on the SEC network with Steve Shaw explaining some of the more controversial calls during the Saturday games. Now, Mark, to me, that's appointment television, is it not?
Oh, my
to
goodness.
be able to find out what will happen. Now, look, what this won't be, obviously, and I understand the fans are getting upset about this. He's not going to be piling on and naming individual officials with this. They've got to be very careful about this. But I really salute him with this desire to be more transparent. Basically, what he said this week was, we can't continue to do everything we do in secret because in this day and age, you just simply can't do that anymore. So now a lot of this will be experimental and we don't know how it's going to turn out. But Mark, I give them a lot of credit for at least being willing to look at how officiating is done. They also gave the media 39 bullet points of what officials do in a typical week to kind of take a peek behind the curtain, if you will, in these situations. Now, Shaw also said that some of the officials from last year have retired. Some of the officials from last year will not be back. And he obviously did not say who they were. But I think the bottom line is here, as we chew on this for a couple of minutes, is I salute them, Mark, for just having the desire to be able to take a look at this and really get this more out in the open as to maybe why they make these calls. I really do think that will be illuminating if they're able to and are willing to do that with the network once the season begins.
I second the salute. It is extremely transparent and gutsy.
Yeah, it
To
really
go
is.
out on a limb, the only step that they could possibly take to make it even more gutsier, and the fans would love this, but it's not going to happen, is take phone calls.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, this is just a tremendous step. Now, I would think that knowing the SEC in particular, will have their ducks in a row in regards to maybe they reviewed what calls last year transpired that we would need to address, and how would we address them to reach some of the goals that we want to reach by being transparent, but also protecting the individuals that need to be protected and protecting our processes and explaining those fully. So I don't think they're going to expose themselves to too much. Well, they're going to expose themselves to scrutiny, but I would think that they've got a game plan in regards to how they're going to approach these topics and explain these calls.
Well, and another thing I thought was fascinating is
Unfortunately, Brent has locked up on us, and we believe that he only has a couple more minutes. He needs to get to an appointment. Brent Beard from First Coast News. He's a Heisman voter and also on College Sports Today on Sports Radio 930 AM in Jacksonville. And I will remind everyone who's watching, and that's small in number today, but it's much larger than it potentially would have been a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and will potentially be and will be much larger in a few weeks. So this time right here is reserved for you, the community of college football, you, the voice of college football community. This time is reserved for you to jump on with me and talk college football. So Brent, yes, he's a professional, but he is only on here because he's a subscriber of Patreon, the voice of college football. So he's basically appearing as a fan, as a subscriber, and part of the college football community. So we give you the same invitation, and you're going to have to, as we work through the operational and technical aspects of this, you're going to have to let me know if it works. So I sent you the link. I sent you the link that is provided on YouTube that should allow you to jump on. I can certainly do that again and see. We probably should test this out sometime. Justin, if you're out there watching, I know that you are. Excuse me. I posted a link following your comment to see if this is operational. There's another link. So there's a few other links in play, and I don't know exactly what would be the best one to send out to the audience. I should probably send the one that I sent Brent to jump on the line. So I'm going to go on Patreon. Justin, if you're watching, send me. This is all experimental. This is week one. We want to work out the kinks. So when we've got 100 to 200 to 1,000 folks in the community here at the Voice of College Football, that we can do this correctly. So with 1 or 2 on the line potentially, and 11 with the Voice of College Football community, we want to make sure we get this right for future weeks. So and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. So I believe we're transmitting okay. Justin, I don't believe there's a live chat. I'm going to have to look into that. I'll ask Patreon if that's available, because obviously, so the deal is we're going through Patreon, but we are still utilizing YouTube's platform. So there could be a possibility of a live chat, but I want to provide the link and see if that works. It worked for Brent. And it should work for everyone else. So I'm going to jump on here, and I'm going to provide you with the link to see if whomever's watching, because that's what this live stream is going to be all about. It's going to be about bringing you on to talk to me. So Brent froze up, and I believe he had to go anyway. He had an appointment, but again, Brent will join us later, and again, he will join us in the future, but not anymore. So then any of you could join us. So that's the deal right here on our live stream that we're providing each and every week. Two live streams. This one in particular engages you, the viewer, part of our community, the voice of college football, to come on and talk college football with me. And then we've got a second live stream that we'll provide each and every weekend where I react to your viewer comments, and I'll announce when that will be, probably tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, with the live stream. We did our first viewer comment reacts last weekend, and that was a whole lot of fun. All right, I'm going to scan the college football headlines and see if there's anything there to talk about. And again, I've provided the link in the comment section below. If you'd like to jump on and talk college football with me, you can do so. And I will inquire Justin and others about a live chat here for our live stream. But again, this is all about you coming on to talk college football with me each and every week. Wide receiver Julian Fleming, the number 4 ranked recruit overall, so he's the top wide receiver, has committed to Ohio State. Fleming, the top receiver in the 2020 class, chose the Buckeyes over Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, and Penn State, and is the second 5-star to commit to Ohio State in this cycle. Excuse me. So is this meaningful? Absolutely, it's meaningful. Is it locked and loaded that Julian Fleming, Julian Fleming will attend Ohio State and play football with the Buckeyes? Of course not. The signing period comes up in mid-December, and then again the first Wednesday of February. So there's much time for Julian Fleming to be plucked away from Ohio State. Fleming does say, for a while I thought it was going to be Penn State. Then for a while I thought I was going to Clemson. And then I just finally settled down and figured it out. It was just the at-home feeling, and their players at Ohio State put their players first. And all my visits there, I had countless hours with all the players, so I really got the college vibe right away. So there you go. You've got elite schools all sending droves of players into the NFL, playing in huge games, championship efforts, top-notch facilities, everything you could want as a college football player. That may be at times the deciding factor. Where do they feel comfortable? Do they feel comfortable with this coaching staff and this head coach and this position coach and this group of players, or at other stops? His recruitment has gone back and forth, and for quite some time, many believed that he would add to Clemson's impressive recruiting class, which may turn out to be the highest rated and most impressive recruiting class that we've seen since rankings have been kept. So again, Julian Fleming, 6'2", 200 pounds, wide receiver from Southern California, or Southern Columbia High School in Catawissa, Pennsylvania. 5-star offensive tackle Paris Johnson Jr., who also signed with Ohio State. Ohio State has landed at least one 5-star in each of its classes going back to 2012. So we throw around the terms 5 stars and 4 stars. The 5 stars don't always make it. There are busts, but consider that there are only 35 to 45-star players every year, which is minuscule. It's a drop in the ocean compared to the masses of players that are signed. Let's say an average of 20 per class, 70 teams in the Power 5. That's 1,400 players, 130 FBS teams, 130 times 20, that's 2,600 players, and only 35 to 40 of them are 5 stars. So this kid's elite, and Ohio State has 2 of them signed, committed for the 2020 class. Of course, the signings coming in December and February. Also, Georgia's going to be selling beer and wine at the games. And I saw a post from Peter Burns from the SEC Network the other day about should beer and wine in particular be sold at college football venues. My first reaction is no, that there's going to be more incidents and issues and fights and violence. And regardless of regardless of the restraints that they put on it and the time duration at which they sell it, I would guess that they would end selling beer and wine at the end of the third quarter. However, people leave football games and sporting events early. So I think they're causing more issues than pleasure or enjoyment that is being created. Those beverages are consumed outside in the parking lot before the game and after the game anyway. And college football events are the most rabid, most exciting, exhilarating, and most energy-packed sporting events that we have in this country. So to mix that with beer and wine may not necessarily be the smartest step. But at the University of Georgia, they're only going to be doing this for 25,000 K donors. I don't know how fair that is, but I guess if somebody's willing and able to donate that kind of money, then there should be some benefit to that. Let's see what the distinction is here and how they're going to regulate this. Well, some University of Georgia fans will be able to buy beer during football games, but only donors who have agreed to give tens of thousands of dollars will be allowed to drink. UGA Athletic Director Greg McGarity told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on Wednesday that beer and wine will be sold in Sanford Stadium's premium seating area during the upcoming football season. He says that area will be limited to Magill Society. Forgive me if I pronounced that incorrectly. Magill Society members who must pledge at least $25,000 to the UGA Athletic Association. Well, there you go. Members won't be able to view games from there. The only area where drinking is permitted. Members won't be able to view games from there. The only area where drinking is permitted. Drink prices are unclear. So you're going to have to do your drinking where you can't view the game. SEC leadership is in the midst of general alcohol sales discussions. All right. Virginia has extended Bronco Mendenhall through 2024. That's a smart move. Bronco Mendenhall has proven himself not just at Virginia, because based on one decent season, but based on his work at BYU, we see what BYU is post Bronco Mendenhall, struggling to get to postseason play. During Bronco Mendenhall's tenure at BYU, against quality schedules, he was able to win roughly 8 to 9 games per season consistently. He comes to Virginia, and of course, the first season was a rough go, and he predicted it to be. He wanted to look long-term, institute his process, and not try to band-aid the problems and win a few more football games that first season. So the Cavaliers went 2-10, but quickly have gone to postseason play at 6-7, and now 8-5 with an impressive showing against South Carolina, 28-0 in the Belk Bowl last year. So Bronco Mendenhall has been extended. That is a win-win for Virginia and Bronco Mendenhall, who has shown that he can come cross-country. And despite the limitations and the requirements at a very fine university, and he hasn't even been able to, well, maybe in the third season, the impact of his recruiting classes has taken hold to a certain extent. But to improve the football team, his second season shows his coaching prowess and now the recruiting should take over. And I don't expect Virginia to turn into a national contender overnight or anytime under Bronco Mendenhall, but it's obvious his coaching acumen and ability is in play at Virginia, and they've made a smart move to wrap him up after making the smarter move by actually hiring the guy and bringing him in after several poor coaching hires that few of them seemed to be decent hires on the surface. But Virginia football has won little since Al Groh was really the last coach who consistently went to bowl games to a certain extent and had decent teams that would finish in the top 40 in the nation. Since then, it's been what you guys like to say is a dumpster fire, but that has ended apparently under, excuse me, Bronco Mendenhall. I gave my projection earlier on Virginia football. They do have one of the weakest schedules in the country. I believe they've got a non-conference game against Notre Dame. They do in Charlottesville. That should be an interesting affair in September. Other than that, weak non-conference, 3-week non-conference games. They play in the Coastal Division, of course. And I don't remember the out of division games that they face, but I've got their schedule ranked, I believe, 63rd in the country out of 70 Power 5 teams, so that they should make some hay against that and contend for the Coastal Division. I had them slated at 8-4. That's my projection in the spring. 8-4 for Virginia. So let me invite everyone in, and we'll huddle up. And maybe that's a good name for the show. Right now, it's just basically the community live, the Voice of College Football community. I just named this, hey, Community Live. We'll come up with a name, and maybe with your help, we'll land on the right name. I don't trust myself in determining names of shows. Mark Rogers TV is Mark Rogers TV because that's my name, and I didn't know which sport, or I knew that I'd be talking about sports. I had not settled on college football at the time. So that's why it was Mark Rogers TV and not something like College Football Coast to Coast, which is a name that I loved and I used for a Wednesday live stream a few years ago for about 15 to 20 weeks when that was produced by my man Marty McPadden. Back to what we're doing here. So you may have seen Brent Beard on from First Coast News. He was not on because professional. So this is a different deal, different approach right here. This is a special and unique approach that we're having here each and every week on Patreon at the Voice of College Football community right here. We are going to discuss college football with you, our community. So I'm going to send the link each and every week, and whomever wants to jump on and talk college football with me is welcome to do just that. I am going to send a question out to my patrons, the Voice of College Football community, and ask you if this is something that you like to do. This was suggested to me. I thought it was a tremendous recommendation by several people to bring on you, the community, to talk college football here with me each and every week. So for this week, it was 11 a.m. Eastern time on Friday. I understand because people work typically during the day that this may not be the best of times. We'll have to figure that out and work that out with my schedule and with everybody's schedule. And it's obviously not going to work as we grow in numbers, but we will make the most informed decision we can on the scheduling of this live stream. And then another live stream that we're going to provide each and every week where I react to your comments on YouTube. And I will send out a notification on when that's going to be this weekend, but most likely it's going to be Saturday morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, this time is reserved for you to talk college football with me. I will send out the link. Let me know if it doesn't work. But that is the link that I was provided and provided to Brent, today's guest, who, again, even though he's a professional, that's not why he was on today. He was on because he's a member of the Voice of College Football community. He is subscribed right here on Patreon. We will see all of you
Most likely tomorrow, I will make an announcement of the next live stream for this week. We deliver 2 per week, exclusive live streams right here on Patreon at the Voice of College Football Community. Justin, everybody else, we'll see you next time.